The security footage would later show exactly 3.7 seconds between the moment Preston Vane pointed his manicured finger at Maria Chen's face and the moment her entire world collapsed. "You're fired," the Galleria Mall manager announced, his voice echoing across the marble atrium loud enough for the holiday shoppers to pause mid-transaction. Effective immediately. Violation of Employee Conduct Policy, Section 12, Paragraph 4. Unauthorized personnel in restricted areas during work hours. Maria's cleaning cart, loaded with industrial disinfectant and the dreams she'd scrubbed into every floor tile for 8 months, sat abandoned beside the ornate fountain. Her hands, raw from bleach and winter cold, trembled as she clutched her 6-year-old daughter closer. "Sir, please," Maria whispered, her accent thickening with panic. "Lily's daycare closed early because of the snow. I had no choice. I kept her quiet. She didn't disturb anyone. Policy is policy." Preston smoothed his Armani tie, a gesture he'd perfected to communicate exactly how much he didn't care. "This is a luxury establishment. We maintain standards. Perhaps you'd be better suited to a discount chain where they're more accommodating of your circumstances." The crowd that had gathered wore expressions ranging from pity to embarrassment, but no one spoke. This was the Galleria, where a coffee cost $18 and compassion was strictly off menu. Preston was mid-turn, already dismissing the woman from his consciousness, when a shadow fell across the fountain's dancing lights. The shopper saw him first. 6'5" of walking nightmare, dressed in leather that had seen more roads than most people had seen sunrises. His cut, the sleeveless jacket that marked him as Iron Saints Motorcycle Club, bore patches that told stories good citizens didn't want to read. His arms were murals of ink and scar tissue. His beard was the kind of white that came from years, not fashion, flowing down to mid-chest like a waterfall of aged snow. Arthur Bear Sullivan had been trying to exit the mall unnoticed, his charitable shopping mission accomplished, when he'd heard the commotion. Now he stood 10 feet from Preston Vane, a shopping bag full of toys for the children's hospital dangling from one scarred hand, his expression carved from granite and bad intentions. "Did I just hear you fire a single mother on Christmas Eve?" Bear's voice was gravel scraping across iron. "Because I gotta tell you, friend, that seems like the kind of thing that puts you on a very specific list. And I'm currently working for the guy who writes it." Preston's face cycled through confusion, indignation, and finally settled on outraged authority. "Security. We have a vagrant." "Hey, mister." A small voice cut through the tension like a bell through smoke. Everyone, Preston, Bear, the crowd, even the fountain, seemed to hold their breath as little Lily Chen slipped from her mother's grip and walked directly toward the terrifying biker. Her sneakers, worn through at the toes, squeaked on the polished floor. Her winter coat was 2 sizes too small, the pink faded to almost gray. But her eyes, those eyes were Christmas morning and shooting stars, and every kind of magic that still believed the world could be good. She stopped directly in front of Bear, tilted her head back to take in the full mountain range of him, and studied his magnificent beard with the serious concentration of a gemologist examining diamonds. The mall had gone library quiet. "Excuse me," Lily whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Are you Santa? I know you're in disguise, but I promise I won't tell anybody. Your secret's safe with me." Bear blinked. The terrifying president of the Iron Saints MC, a man who'd stared down police task forces and rival gangs, a man who'd survived 2 tours in Afghanistan and a divorce that nearly killed him, blinked like someone had just spoken to him in a language he'd forgotten he knew. His jaw worked. His hands, scarred knuckles and calloused palms, flexed at his sides. Then Arthur Bear Sullivan did something that would be replayed over 17 million times in the next 72 hours. He dropped to one knee. The descent took longer than it should have. Bear's right knee, the one that still had shrapnel from Kandahar, protested with a grinding pop that made Preston Vane flinch. But Bear didn't flinch. He lowered himself until his scarred face was level with Lily's, until those Christmas morning eyes could look directly into his road-weary ones. Up close, she was even smaller than he'd thought. A bird-bone wisp of a kid with a smile that had no business existing in a world that had clearly been unkind to her. Her coat was missing buttons. Her hair was held back with a rubber band, not the fancy clips other girls her age wore. But she looked at Bear like he was the answer to every prayer she'd ever whispered. Bear checked left, then right, scanning the crowd with exaggerated suspicion. When he spoke, his voice dropped to a conspiratorial rumble that somehow carried across the entire atrium. Listen to me, kid. I need you to keep this between us, understand? He leaned in closer, and several shoppers actually stepped back, as if proximity to this moment might somehow implicate them in whatever was about to happen. I'm not the big guy. Santa's up at the North Pole right now, prepping the sleigh for the big night. But me, he tapped the patch on his leather cut, the one that read SGT, at arms in faded thread beneath the Iron Saint's skull logo. I'm his head of security. I run the naughty list detail. My job is to ride around undercover, checking who's been good, who's been bad, and who deserves a miracle. He paused, studying her face with warrior serious intensity. And I gotta say, kid, you just made the nice list. Top tier. Gold star. The whole 9 yards. The transformation on Lily's face was geological. Like watching flowers bloom in time-lapse. Like sunrise over mountains. Like every metaphor for pure joy that had ever been written, but never quite captured. Her smile started small, then spread, then detonated into something that could have powered the entire city grid. I knew it. She didn't quite shout, but her whisper was the loudest sound in the mall. I told Mama. I said, Santa wouldn't forget us, he's just busy. And you look tough enough to fight off the Grinch and the bad guys. You have no idea, Bear said, his eyes sliding to Preston Vane with a look that could have frozen the fountain solid. No idea at all. He started to rise, but Lily's small hand caught his arm. From her coat pocket, she extracted a piece of paper folded so many times it was nearly falling apart. The creases were worn soft, suggesting it had been opened and refolded countless times. I wrote this for Santa, Lily said, pressing it into Bear's palm with the solemnity of someone handing over state secrets. But if you're his security guy, maybe you can make sure he gets it? I know he's super busy with all the good kids who have stuff already, but maybe if there's time. Bear unfolded the letter with fingers that had broken noses and rebuilt engines. Fingers that suddenly felt too clumsy for this tissue paper delicate task. The handwriting was first-grade careful, each letter a small war against the lines. Dear Santa, my name is Lily and I am 6. I have been very good. I help Mama clean even when I'm tired. I don't ask for toys at the store. Mama says you only come to rich kids' houses because you can't carry everything in one night. She says we have to take care of ourselves. But I think maybe she's wrong. I think maybe you're just really busy. I don't need toys, Santa. But Mama cries at night when she thinks I'm sleeping. She cries about rent and food, and I'm scared we have to leave our apartment. Can you help Mama not cry? That's my only wish. Love, Lily. P.S. I left you cookies last year, but we had to eat them because we were hungry. I'm sorry. Bear read it twice. The second time, something behind his eyes that had been frozen for a very long time began to crack. She's only 6. Maria's voice came from behind him, broken and desperate. She doesn't understand how the world works yet. How it's not about being good or bad. It's about money. Preston Vane interrupted, stepping forward with the confidence of a man who'd never been punched in the mouth but desperately needed to be. It's about money and merit and the natural order of society. Some people rise, others serve. That's not cruelty, that's economics. He turned to Bear with barely concealed disgust. And you, sir, need to leave before I call actual law enforcement. You're disturbing our clientele. Bear stood. It took a while. The rise from kneeling to standing seemed to take entire geological ages, each inch adding to the mountain until he towered over Preston by a good 8 inches and probably 80 pounds of muscle and bad intentions. Law enforcement, Bear repeated slowly, like he was tasting the words and finding them sour. You mean the cops? Yeah. Call him. Ask for Sergeant Rodriguez. Tell him Bear from the Iron Saints is being harassed. See what he says. Preston's expression flickered, just for a moment, but recovered. Your implied connections don't impress me. This is private property, and I'm within my rights to remove a fired employee and her child. Bear's voice could have cut steel. On Christmas Eve, while calling her poverty a violation of your standards, he looked around at the crowd, many of whom were filming now, phones held high. Yeah, that's gonna look great on Yelp. I don't need to justify my management decisions to me. Bear smiled. It was not a nice smile. No, you don't. But you might need to justify them to whoever owns this mall. And you definitely need to justify them to every person in this building who's currently uploading video of you firing a cleaning lady for being too poor to afford childcare. Merry Christmas, Preston. You just went viral. Preston's face went through several shades of red before settling on purple. Security. 2 guards, both of whom had been watching from a careful distance, approached with extreme reluctance. One of them, a guy in his 50s with salt and pepper hair, actually nodded respectfully to Bear. "Mr. Sullivan," the older guard said quietly. "We don't want any trouble." "Neither do I, Frank." Bear remembered him from the children's hospital charity rides. "Good man. Veteran. I'm leaving. Just wanted to make sure this little girl knew that somebody was watching out for her." He knelt down again, faster this time, muscle memory overriding the pain, and looked Lily in the eyes. "I'm gonna make sure Santa gets this letter personally. That's a promise." "And Santa's security team? We don't break promises. Not ever." "Understand." Lily nodded, solemn as a judge. "Good. Now you take care of your mama. She's tougher than anyone in this whole building, including me. And that's saying something." He stood, tipped an imaginary hat to Maria, who looked like she'd been simultaneously saved and ruined, and walked toward the exit with the measured pace of a man who was absolutely not fleeing, merely choosing to leave. Behind him, Preston's voice carried. "And don't come back. We don't serve your kind here." Bear paused at the automatic doors, turned, looked back at the mall manager with eyes that had seen things Preston couldn't imagine in his worst nightmares. "My kind," Bear repeated softly, "is the kind that keeps promises to 6-year-old girls." "What's your kind, Preston?" He didn't wait for an answer. The doors slid open, and Arthur Bear Sullivan walked out into the December cold, Lily's letter folded carefully in the pocket over his heart, next to the photo of a wife who'd died too young and a Christmas spirit he'd thought was dead and buried. Behind him, phones were still filming. The video was already uploading, and in 17 minutes, it would have 10,000 views. In 3 hours, 100,000. By midnight, it would be national news. But none of that mattered to Bear. What mattered was the letter burning against his chest like a brand, like a mission briefing, like a declaration of war against every Preston Vane in the world who thought poverty was a personality flaw instead of a systematic failure. His motorcycle, a customized 1,200 cubic centimeters Harley that he'd named Bertha, was parked 3 blocks away in a garage. Bear walked through the snow, his breath fogging in the streetlight-stained air, his mind already working through logistics and resources, and exactly what kind of Christmas miracle could be delivered by a motorcycle club with more heart than the entire Galleria Mall's board of directors. By the time he reached Bertha, his phone was ringing. "Yeah," he answered, mounting the bike with practiced ease. "Bear, it's Tiny." The voice on the other end belonged to a man who stood 6'8" and weighed 300 pounds of pure muscle. Tiny was many things, but Tiny wasn't one of them. "Brother, you're all over the internet. What the hell happened at the mall?" Bear kicked Bertha to life. The engine's roar was like a dragon waking up hungry. "Change of plans for the holiday run, Tiny. Call an emergency church meeting. All members, all chapters. I don't care if they're 3 states away, get them here. We've got a mission." "What kind of mission?" Bear thought about Lily's eyes. About Maria's tears. About Preston's smug face and the way the entire mall had stood by and let it happen. "The kind where we remind people what Christmas is actually about. And the kind where I get to ruin a rich guy's entire year. Call it Operation North Pole. Copy that, Prez. Everyone's gonna love this. When do we ride?" Bear looked up at the sky. Snow was starting to fall again, thick and heavy, the kind that buried everything and started the world over clean. "Tomorrow night. Christmas Eve. We're gonna deliver some presents and some justice." Not necessarily in that order. He hung up, gunned the engine, and roared off into the night, leaving behind nothing but tire tracks and fresh snow and the memory of a little girl who still believed in magic. Behind him, in the warm glow of the Galleria Mall, Preston Vane was already making calls to corporate, spinning the story, protecting his position. He had no idea that he'd just made an enemy who rode with 50 brothers, had connections from the courthouse to the state house, and was absolutely done with letting people like him win. The war for Christmas had begun, and Santa's head of security didn't lose wars. The Iron Saints Clubhouse sat on 3 acres of industrial property on the edge of town, a former mechanic's garage that had been converted into something between a fortress and a community center. The main building was corrugated steel and cinder block, decorated with the club's logo, a skull with wings and a halo, iron and sacred all at once, painted 20 feet high on the southern wall. Inside, it was all leather and chrome and the smell of motor oil mixed with cigarette smoke and the ghost of 1,000 beers. A long bar dominated one wall, tended by Maddie, a woman in her 60s who'd been with the club longer than most of the current members. Pool tables occupied the center. A massive garage bay opened to the left, currently housing a dozen bikes in various states of repair or customization. But it was the back room, the chapel, they called it, where the real business happened. Bear sat at the head of a scarred oak table that had witnessed 20 years of decisions, debates, and the occasional fistfight. Around him, 17 members of the Iron Saints filled the available chairs, standing room, and in Tiny's case, most of a wall. They ranged in age from 23 to 67. Some were veterans, some were former cops, some had records that would make civilians nervous. But every single one of them had taken an oath that mattered more than blood, brotherhood, loyalty. Protect those who can't protect themselves. Bear had called this meeting for 7 p.m. By 6:45, every member within 200 miles had arrived. Word traveled fast when the Prez used the emergency code. All right, Tiny said, closing the chapel door and taking his place at Bear's right hand. We're all here. Floor's yours, brother. Bear didn't stand. Didn't need to. His presence filled the room regardless. I'm going to tell you a story, he began, his voice rough from the cold ride back. And then I'm going to tell you what we're doing about it. And if anyone has a problem with what I'm about to propose, speak now, because after tonight, we're committed. Silence. The kind of silence that meant go ahead. We're listening. We're with you. Bear pulled Lily's letter from his pocket. It had gotten slightly crumpled during the ride, the cheap paper soft from too much handling. He smoothed it flat on the table. Today, I got mistaken for Santa Claus by a 6-year-old girl named Lily Chun. A few chuckles rippled through the room. Yeah. Beard's looking good, I know. But here's the thing. This kid, she's got a single mom who works as a cleaner at the Galleria Mall. Worked. Past tense. Because today, the mall manager fired her. On Christmas Eve. For the crime of bringing her daughter to work when daycare closed early. The mood in the room shifted. Humor drained out like oil from a cracked pan. Kid gave me this letter to deliver to Santa. Bear's jaw worked. Tension showing in the cords of his neck. I'm gonna read it to you. And I'm warning you now. If you've got a heart condition, maybe step outside. He read the letter aloud. Every word. Including the PS about the cookies. When he finished, the silence was different. Heavier. The kind of quiet that preceded storms. Jesus Christ, someone whispered. 6 years old, another voice added. The manager's name? This from Axel, the club's former Army Ranger who handled security. Preston Vane. Works at the Galleria. Drives a white Lexus, license plate Luxury 7. Lives at the Waterford Towers penthouse. Barrett spent the ride home, making calls, gathering intel. Old habits from his service days. Makes $180,000 a year managing a mall. Plus bonuses. Fired a woman making $12.50 an hour because her kid was too poor to deserve compassion. We paying him a visit? Axel's hand was already on his phone, probably mapping routes. Eventually. But first, we're going to do something bigger. We're going to give Lily Chun the Christmas that kid deserves. And we're going to make sure every person in this city sees exactly what the Iron Saints Motorcycle Club stands for. What's the play? Tiny asked. Bear leaned forward, his shadow falling across the table like a strategic map. We got 2 days until Christmas. Here's what we're doing. First, we fix Maria Chen's immediate problems. I already made some calls. Her landlord, guy named Dennis Kowalski, he's a decent sort. Runs a small apartment building on 4th Street. I explained the situation. He's giving her through January rent-free while she finds new work. You explained the situation, Maddie repeated from where she stood near the door. That a euphemism for something? Bear's smile was thin. I explained that I'd be personally disappointed if a single mother and her 6-year-old daughter ended up on the street at Christmas. And that the Iron Saints considered Dennis a friend. And we take care of our friends. And expect our friends to do right by people who need help. Diplomatic. Tiny rumbled approvingly. Second, Bear continued, we're doing a toy drive. But not the usual drop-it-in-a-box thing. I want full Santa service. Every kid in the Pine Grove low-income housing complex gets a visit from the Iron Saints Christmas crew. We go door to door, we bring toys, we bring food baskets, we bring the whole experience. Lily's gonna see that Santa's security team doesn't just talk. We deliver. Heads nodded. This was familiar territory. The club did charity runs regularly. But the energy in the room suggested this one would be different. Bigger. More personal. Third, Bear said, and his voice dropped to something darker. We deal with Preston Vane. Not with fists, much as I'd enjoy that. We do it legal, public, and permanent. That viral video is already up to 500,000 views. Preston's bosses at the mall are getting hammered on social media. I've got calls into some reporters I know from the veterans charity events. We're gonna make sure his story gets told until he wishes he'd never heard the name Maria Chun. What about the job? Asked Reaper, a grizzled former mechanic who ran the club's garage operations. She got fired. Mall's not taking her back. No, Bear agreed. They're not. But I made another call. Remember Tommy Nguyen? Owns the hotel chain? We did that charity ride for his nephew's cancer treatment 3 years back. Yeah, kid pulled through. Tommy's good people. Tommy owes us. And he's got a hotel downtown that needs housekeeping staff. I called him, explained Maria's situation, left out the part about me terrorizing her former boss, and Tommy's offering her a supervisor position. $22 an hour, health benefits, and they've got on-site daycare. She starts January 2nd if she wants it. The room erupted in approval. Fists pounded the table. Someone whistled. Maddie actually clapped. Damn, Bear, Tiny said admiringly. You did all that on a 40-minute bike ride home. Made good time. Roads were empty. Bear allowed himself a small smile. But here's the thing, brothers. This isn't just about one kid, one mom. It's about making a statement. Every year, we do toy runs, we do charity rides, we raise money for good causes. But we do it quiet. We do it under the radar because we don't want the publicity, don't want people to think we're looking for credit. He stood now, placing both hands flat on the table. But this time, I want everyone to see. I want that little girl to believe in miracles. I want her mother to know that the world isn't just Preston Vane's and pink slips. And I want every person who watched that video and felt angry or helpless to see that sometimes the good guys actually win. So we go loud, Axel said. It wasn't a question. We go loud, Bear confirmed. Christmas Eve, we light up every bike in the club with Christmas decorations. LED lights, the works. We ride through downtown like a steel parade. We stop at Pine Grove. We deliver presents. And we make sure every news camera in the city is there to film it. We show people that Christmas isn't about money or malls or managers who've forgotten what human decency looks like. It's about miracles, Maddie said softly. It's about keeping promises, Bear corrected, touching the letter still on the table. I told Lily I'd make sure Santa got her letter. Well, Santa's not real, but we are. And we're gonna make damn sure that kid's wish comes true. What about Vane? Reaper pressed. You said we handle him legal. What's that mean? Bear's expression went cold. It means I've got friends looking into his employment contract. Means I've got reporters ready to interview Maria about wrongful termination. Means I've got a lawyer, Danny Ortiz, remember him? We got his kid into that private school scholarship, reviewing whether Preston violated labor laws. And it means that video? It's going to haunt him every time he Googles his own name for the rest of his life. You're gonna bury him in shame and legal paperwork, Tiny said appreciatively. I'm gonna bury him in consequences, Bear corrected. The natural kind. The kind where you reap what you sow. Preston wanted to fire someone for being poor on Christmas? Fine. Let's see how he likes being the most hated man on the internet on Christmas. Motion to approve Operation North Pole, Axel called out. Seconded. Came about 12 voices simultaneously. All in favor. The response was unanimous and loud enough to rattle the windows. All right then. Bear picked up Lily's letter, folded it carefully, and returned it to his pocket. We got 48 hours. Tiny, you coordinate the toy procurement. Work with Maddie. She knows what kids need. Axel, you handle the bike decorations and the route planning. Reaper, make sure every bike is running perfect. I don't want breakdowns in front of news cameras. Everyone else, spread the word to other chapters. I want every Iron Saint within riding distance their Christmas Eve. We're gonna need numbers for this. What about you, Prez? Maddie asked. Bear headed for the door. I've got a few more calls to make. And I need to visit someone who might be able to help with the bigger picture. Bigger than public humiliation and a Christmas miracle. Tiny raised an eyebrow. Yeah, Bear said, pausing in the doorway. Bigger than that. Because Preston Vane isn't the disease, he's just a symptom. And I'm thinking it's time we address the underlying condition. He left them to their planning, walking out into the clubhouse's main room, where music played and beer flowed and brotherhood lived in the spaces between words. But Bear's mind was elsewhere. On a little girl who still believed in Santa. On a mother who'd learned to cry quietly so her daughter wouldn't hear. On a man in an expensive suit who'd casually destroyed someone's life and thought he'd get away with it. Bear pulled out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in 5 years. It rang 3 times before a cultured voice answered. Arthur Sullivan. This is unexpected. Mr. Castellano, Bear said. I need a favor. A big one. And I'm willing to cash in every chip I've got to get it. I'm listening. Bear smiled into the cold December night. Preston Vane had no idea what was coming. But he was about to learn an important lesson about the difference between power and influence. And about what happened when you made an enemy of a man who'd promised a 6-year-old girl a miracle. The conversation lasted 17 minutes. When it ended, Operation North Pole had just gotten a whole lot more interesting. Christmas Eve morning arrived with fresh snow and the kind of cold that bit exposed skin within seconds. The Iron Saints clubhouse, however, was warm as a furnace and twice as active. The garage bay had been transformed into what Tiny called Santa's workshop, if Santa was a biker with PTSD and a really good supply chain. 17 motorcycles stood in neat rows, and what was happening to them was either beautiful or sacrilegious, depending on your perspective. Hold it steady, Axel barked, standing on a milk crate while he attached LED light strips to the frame of his Sportster. The lights, red and green and gold, traced the bike's lines like neon veins. If these fall off mid-ride, I'm blaming you, Reaper. Blame physics. Reaper shot back, helping a younger member named Sketch attach a small artificial Christmas tree to his sissy bar. Not my fault your bike's too pretty to hold decorations. Around the garage, similar scenes unfolded. Some bikes got lights. Others got tinsel, which Maddie insisted on, despite vigorous male protests about aerodynamics. A few got elaborate decorations involving wreaths, bells, and in one case, an actual working sound system programmed to play Jingle Bells on loop. I hate this, Sketch muttered, securing the tiny tree with zip ties. I look ridiculous. You look festive, Maddie corrected, circling with tinsel and the determination of a woman who'd raised 3 boys and knew how to handle reluctant decorators. And if one 6-year-old girl smiles when she sees these bikes, you'll deal with looking ridiculous for one night. Sketch sighed, but kept working. Nobody argued with Maddie. Not even Bear. Speaking of Bear, he stood near the workbench, reviewing a clipboard with Tiny while occasionally glancing at the spectacle around them. Toy count, Bear asked. 317 items, Tiny reported, reading from his own notes. Dolls, action figures, board games, books, art supplies, sports equipment. We hit every Walmart and Target within 50 miles. Also got 75 food baskets, turkeys, stuffing, all the fixings. And we've got 42 bikes confirmed for tonight's ride, with more calling in from the southern chapters. Route, planned to perfection. Tiny unfolded a map marked in red marker. We stage here at 6 p.m. Ride through downtown. That's where we'll pick up the news cameras. I already tipped off Channel 7 and the Tribune. Then we head to Pine Grove Housing Complex, do the distribution. Then we make one final stop. The mall, Bear said. The Galleria Mall, Tiny confirmed with a grin, where we'll have a little chat with management about employment practices and human dignity. Figured you'd want to close the loop on that one. Bear's expression was carved granite. Preston Vane working tonight. Until 9 p.m. It's their big Christmas Eve sale event. He'll be there. Good. A phone rang. Bear answered without looking at the screen. Yeah. Mr. Sullivan, it's Danny Ortiz. The lawyer. Bear stepped away from the noise, pressing the phone closer. Danny, tell me something good. Better than good. I reviewed Maria Chen's termination paperwork, which Preston was stupid enough to file officially. He cited policy violation, but provided no documentation of any verbal warnings, no disciplinary record, nothing. It's a clear wrongful termination case. Even better, I found 3 other employees he fired under similar circumstances in the last year. Pattern of behavior. Can we use it? Use it? Arthur, I can bury him in litigation. But there's a faster way. Paper rustled on the other end. I also pulled Preston Vane's employment contract. He's got a morality clause. If his actions bring significant public disrepute to the Galleria brand, they can terminate him without severance. And that video you mentioned? Last I checked, it was at 2.3 million views. The comments section is calling for his head. Bear felt something warm and vicious curl in his chest. Not quite satisfaction. Not yet. But close. How do we trigger the clause? You don't have to. I already called Galleria's corporate office. Spoke to their legal team. Explained that I represent Ms. Chun and that we're prepared to file suit for wrongful termination discrimination, and creating a hostile work environment. I mentioned the video. I mentioned the public outrage. And I mentioned that this could turn into a very expensive, very public problem for them. What did they say? Danny's smile was audible. They're reviewing the matter with utmost urgency and will take appropriate action. Translation: Preston Vane is getting fired. Probably today. Definitely before their stock price takes another hit. He's losing his job on Christmas Eve, Bear said slowly. The irony is almost too perfect. Karma's not just a concept, Arthur. Sometimes it's a legal strategy. Oh, and Maria Chun? She's got a settlement offer incoming. Not massive, but enough to cover 3 months' rent, and then some. They want this gone before it becomes a class action situation. She agreed to it? Hasn't seen it yet. I'll present it tomorrow. But yeah, she'll agree. It's more money than Preston probably ever thought a cleaning woman deserved. They finished the call with arrangements to meet after Christmas. Bear returned to find the garage transformation nearly complete. 42 motorcycles now looked like they'd been attacked by Christmas itself. The effect was bizarre, beautiful, and somehow perfect. These weren't delicate show bikes. These were road warriors, scarred and powerful and real. Wrapping them in holiday cheer didn't diminish them. It made the whole thing somehow more meaningful. We look insane, Axel observed, standing back to survey his light-wrapped Sportster. We look committed, Bear corrected. Same thing. By noon, the toys were loaded into a borrowed delivery truck, courtesy of Tommy Nguyen's hotel, which also provided the food baskets. By 2 p.m., every participating member had gone home to shower, eat, and prepare for the evening ride. By 4 p.m., they began arriving back at the clubhouse, engines rumbling in sequence like a mechanical carol. Bear spent the intervening hours making final preparations. He called Maria Chun, using the number from the mall's employee directory that Danny had obtained, and had a conversation that lasted 7 minutes and left him feeling like maybe the world wasn't completely broken. Mr. Sullivan, Maria had said, her voice thick with emotion. Lily told me what you said. About being Santa's security. She hasn't stopped talking about it. She thinks you're going to make everything okay. I'm going to try, ma'am. I made her a promise. You don't have to. We're not your responsibility. Ms. Chun, with respect, your daughter asked Santa for one thing. Not toys. Not games. She asked for you to stop crying. Now, I can't fix the whole world. But I can fix this. Will you let me try? Silence. Then, quietly, why? Because I made a promise to a 6-year-old. And because Preston Vane was wrong. About you. About her. About how the world should work. And I'm in a position to prove it. More silence. Then, okay. Yes. Thank you. You got plans tonight? Christmas Eve. We were going to stay home. Watch movies. I can't afford much else. Change of plans. Be at Pine Grove Community Center at 7 p.m. And Miss Chun, dress warm. It's going to be a loud night. Now, at 6 p.m. exactly, Bear stood in the clubhouse parking lot and watched his brothers assemble. 42 motorcycles. 42 riders dressed in leather and Christmas lights and determination. The bikes growled and purred, exhaust fogging in the cold air, LED lights blazing against the winter darkness. Tiny pulled up beside Bear on a massive Road King that looked like a parade float and sounded like thunder. We ready? Bear looked at his club. His brothers. Men who'd fought beside him, drunk with him, mourned with him. Men who'd answered the call because that's what family did. Yeah, Bear said, mounting Bertha and feeling the familiar vibration of the engine through his bones. We're ready. Let's go deliver some Christmas spirit. And ruin Preston Vane's whole year. Tiny added cheerfully. That too. Bear raised his hand. 42 engines revved in response, a symphony of power and purpose. He pointed toward downtown. And the Iron Saints rode out into the night like a steel avalanche wrapped in Christmas lights, heading to deliver miracles and justice in equal measure. Behind them, the clubhouse stood empty and quiet. Ahead of them, the city waited. And in a small apartment on 4th Street, a 6-year-old girl named Lily pressed her face to the window, watching snow fall, still believing in magic. She had no idea that magic was currently riding toward her at 70 miles per hour, wearing leather and carrying exactly 317 presents. But she was about to find out. The sound reached Pine Grove 10 minutes before the bikes did. It started as a rumble, low and distant, like approaching weather. Then it grew, deeper, louder, until the windows in the low-income housing complex began to vibrate in their frames, and children pressed their faces to glass to see what was coming. What came was Christmas on chrome horses. 42 motorcycles rolled into the Pine Grove parking lot in perfect formation, their LED lights blazing red and green and gold against the darkness, their engines creating a thunderous carol that echoed off the brick buildings. At their head rode Bear, his white beard flowing behind him like a battle standard, his bike's lights tracing his silhouette in holy fire. The community center, a squat building that served as daycare, meeting hall, and refuge for the complex's 200-plus families, had its doors open. Inside, word had spread somehow. Maddie's phone tree worked miracles, that something was happening. Something big. Families lined the walkways. Kids in hand-me-down coats. Parents who worked 3 jobs and still couldn't make rent. Elderly folks who remembered when Christmas had felt magical instead of brutal. They watched the motorcycles arrive with expressions ranging from confusion to awe to the kind of hope that hurt to look at directly. Bear killed his engine. The silence that followed was profound, broken only by the tick of cooling metal and the whisper of falling snow. He dismounted, his boots crunching in fresh powder, and walked toward the community center entrance where Maria Chun stood with Lily, both of them wearing expressions of absolute shock. "Evening, ma'am," Bear said, removing his helmet. "Told you it'd be a loud night." Lily's scream of pure joy probably woke people in the next county. "You came." She launched herself at Bear with the aerodynamics of a cannonball and the stopping power of a pillow. He caught her automatically, lifting her up like she weighed nothing. "Mama, I told you. I told you Santa's security team was real." "I see that, baby," Maria whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I see that." Bear set Lily down gently and addressed the crowd that had gathered. "Evening, folks. My name's Arthur Sullivan, but people call me Bear. I'm the president of the Iron Saints Motorcycle Club. We're here because someone asked Santa for help, and Santa's busy tonight, so he sent us instead." "Are you elves?" a little boy asked, very seriously. "More like security contractors," Tiny rumbled from behind Bear. "Heavy Cavalry Division." That got a laugh. The tension broke like ice cracking. "Here's how this works," Bear continued. "We've got toys for every kid in this complex. We've got food baskets for every family. And we've got something else, too. We've got time. Any kid wants a picture with a biker? We're here. Any adult wants to talk about resources, job opportunities, community support? We're here for that, too. Tonight, Pine Grove is North Pole South." The cheer that went up was louder than the motorcycles. What happened next would be described in news reports as organized chaos, and in social media posts as the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. The Iron Saints distributed gifts with the efficiency of a military operation and the warmth of a family reunion. Each biker had been assigned specific families. Maddie's organization skills were legendary. Each child got toys appropriate to their age and interests. Each family got a food basket that could feed them through New Year's. But more than that, the bikers stayed. They took pictures. They listened to stories. They fixed broken bikes and loose doorknobs, and the kind of small problems that snowball into disasters when you're poor. They sat with elderly folks who were lonely. They played catch with kids who'd never had anyone to throw a ball with them. Sketch, who'd complained about looking ridiculous, spent 40 minutes on the ground having a tea party with a 5-year-old girl who insisted he was a very pretty elf. Axel helped a single father install a car seat properly because the guy had been too embarrassed to ask anyone else. Reaper fixed 3 bicycles, 2 ceiling fans, and a wheelchair that had been broken for 6 months. And Bear? Bear sat in the community center with Lily on one knee and Lily's letter in his hand, reading it out loud to the news cameras that had shown up, Channel 7, The Tribune, and 3 social media influencers who'd driven from the city when they heard what was happening. "This," Bear said, his voice carrying across the room, "is what a 6-year-old girl asked Santa for. Not toys. Not games. She asked for her mother to stop crying. She asked for rent money and stability and the kind of basic human security that every child deserves, and that we've somehow decided is too expensive to provide." He looked directly at the nearest camera. Preston Vane, the mall manager who fired this girl's mother on Christmas Eve. He makes $180,000 a year. The median income in Pine Grove is $23,000. One person's salary could change 30 lives. But instead, people like Preston use their power to punish poverty instead of addressing it. "Is this political?" one reporter asked. "No," Bear said flatly. "This is human. There's nothing political about a 6-year-old not having enough to eat. There's nothing partisan about a mother working 3 jobs, and still facing eviction. This is about us. All of us. Deciding whether we're going to be Preston Vanes who hide behind policy and profit, or whether we're going to be the kind of people who actually give a damn when a kid asks for help. The camera loved him. Social media would love him more. By 8:30 p.m., every gift had been distributed. Every basket delivered. Every tear dried, temporarily. The bikers began to remount their rides, engines growling back to life one by one. But Bear had one more stop to make. He found Maria Chun near the community center entrance, watching Lily show off her new art supplies to a group of entranced children. "Ms. Chun," Bear said quietly, "got something for you." He handed her an envelope. Inside was a letter from Tommy Nguyen's hotel, offering her the supervisor position. $22 an hour. Benefits. On-site daycare. Start date January 2nd. Maria read it twice. Then a third time. Then she looked up at Bear with eyes that had seen too much hardship and not enough kindness. "I don't understand. Why would you? We're nobody. We're nothing to you." "You're not nothing," Bear said gently. "You're somebody who got knocked down by a system that's rigged against you. And your daughter is somebody who still believes the world can be good. That's not nothing. That's everything. I can't repay this. Don't want you to. But if you're looking for a way to pay it forward, I got a suggestion. Anything." In that letter, Lily said her mama told her Santa only comes to rich kids. Don't teach her that. Teach her that sometimes good people show up when you need them. Teach her that communities take care of each other. Teach her that the world's got more Iron Saints than Preston Vanes, even if the Preston Vanes have louder voices. Maria nodded, unable to speak. "And Ms. Chun, you're gonna be okay. I promise you that. We keep our promises." Bear walked back to his bike, where Lily was waiting with a drawing she'd made. It showed a giant bearded man on a motorcycle with wings, surrounded by smaller motorcycles. Above it, in careful letters, "Santa's security team. For you," Lily said, handing it over solemnly. "So you don't forget your mission." Bear took the drawing like it was made of gold leaf and dreams. "I'll keep this forever, kid. You stay good, okay? And remember, miracles are real. Sometimes they just show up on motorcycles." "I know," Lily said with the certainty of someone who'd just witnessed proof. "I always knew." Bear mounted Bertha. Around him, 41 other engines roared to life. LED lights blazed. The steel cavalry was ready to ride. "One more stop, boys," Bear called over the noise. "We got a Grinch to visit." The cheer that went up could have melted snow for miles. And as the Iron Saints pulled out of Pine Grove, leaving behind joy and food and hope and a 6-year-old girl who would tell this story for the rest of her life, they rode toward the Galleria Mall with the righteousness of people who'd made good on their promises and now wanted to watch karma do the same. Preston Vane's terrible, horrible, no good, very bad Christmas Eve was about to get significantly worse. And Bear couldn't wait. The Galleria Mall closed at 9 p.m. on Christmas Eve, but Preston Vane was still there at 8:45, overseeing the final VIP purchases and making sure every display was perfect for tomorrow's after-Christmas sale rush. He'd had a terrible day. The video had spread faster than he'd thought possible. His inbox was flooded with angry emails. Corporate had called 3 times. His social media accounts had been bombarded with thousands of comments calling him everything from heartless to significantly worse. But Preston had weathered storms before. Bad press faded. Internet outrage was temporary. By next week, this would blow over, and he'd still have his job, his salary, and his penthouse view. He was wrong. At exactly 8:47 p.m., the rumble began. Preston looked up from his tablet, frowning. It sounded like engines? Multiple engines. Getting closer. The mall's head of security, Frank, the older guard who'd tried to de-escalate yesterday's situation, appeared at Preston's office door, his expression carefully neutral. "Mr. Vane, we have a situation in the parking lot." "What kind of situation?" "The motorcycle club. They're here. All of them." Preston felt his blood pressure spike. "Call the police. I want them arrested for trespassing, disturbing the peace, whatever you can charge them with." Frank didn't move. "Sir, they're not on mall property. They're in the public parking area. They're not breaking any laws." "Then tell them to leave." "Sir, there are about 50 of them. And they're not doing anything illegal. They're just sitting there, with their lights on." Preston stormed past Frank, heading for the mall's main entrance. He could see through the glass doors now, and what he saw made his stomach drop. The parking lot looked like a Christmas concert had mated with a biker rally and produced offspring that glowed. 50-plus motorcycles sat in perfect rows, all facing the mall entrance, their LED lights creating a multicolored spectacle visible from space. News vans had somehow appeared, cameras already rolling. A crowd of shoppers had gathered to watch, phones out, filming. And at the head of the formation, sitting calmly on his decorated Harley, was Bear. Preston grabbed his phone and dialed corporate. The executive on call, a woman named Sandra Voss, answered on the first ring. Mr. Vane, I was just about to call you. There's a biker gang in our parking lot. I know. It's on the news. Channel 7 is broadcasting it live. Preston's chest tightened. I'll handle it. I'll call security. You'll do nothing, Sandra interrupted, her voice ice. In fact, you'll clean out your office. You're terminated, effective immediately. Your access cards are already deactivated. What? You can't. I've worked here for 12 years. You created a public relations nightmare that's cost us measurably in brand value and customer goodwill. We've received over 10,000 complaints in the last 24 hours. Our social media engagement is in freefall, and we're facing a wrongful termination lawsuit from Ms. Chen's attorney. Your employment contract has a morality clause. You violated it. You're done. The line went dead. Preston stood in the center of the mall, his reflection staring back at him from 100 polished surfaces, and felt his carefully constructed world collapse. Outside, Bear dismounted. He walked toward the entrance with the measured pace of someone who had all the time in the world and knew it. The automatic doors opened. He stepped inside, bringing the cold December air with him. The remaining shoppers stopped and stared. A few started filming. Preston wanted to run. Instead, he drew himself up, trying to project authority he no longer possessed. You need to leave, he said. This is private property. Not for you anymore, Bear replied calmly. Just got word from corporate. You're fired. Merry Christmas, Preston. The color drained from Preston's face. You can't prove I don't need to. You proved it yourself. On camera. To millions of people. Bear gestured to the parking lot, where the bikes sat like a glowing jury. See, here's what you don't understand about consequences. You thought you could fire a single mother on Christmas Eve and face no repercussions because you had power and she didn't. But power's not permanent. And the internet? The internet is forever. You destroyed my career over one employee. You destroyed your career, Bear corrected, his voice hard. I just made sure the world saw what you did. Maria Chen? She's got a new job. Better pay, better benefits, better boss. Her daughter gets to believe in miracles because we showed up and proved they exist. But you? You get to be the guy who fired someone for being poor. That's your legacy now. Own it. Preston's hands shook. I'll sue you for harassment. For what? Standing in a parking lot? Bringing Christmas presents to poor kids? Exposing wrongful termination? Good luck with that. My lawyer's better than yours, and I've got about 50 witnesses who'll testify I've been nothing but polite. Bear leaned in closer, his voice dropping to something only Preston could hear. But here's the real thing, Preston. The thing you need to understand. This wasn't about you. This was about a 6-year-old girl who asked Santa for help and actually got it. You were just the obstacle in the way. And obstacles? Bear smiled. We know how to remove obstacles. He straightened, turned, and walked back toward the entrance. Wait. Preston called out, hating how desperate he sounded. What am I supposed to do now? Bear paused, looked back. Find a job. Pay your rent. Struggle a little. Maybe learn what it feels like to be on the other side of power. Maybe become a better person. Or don't. Your choice. But you don't get to keep hurting people without consequences. Not anymore. He walked out into the snow. The Iron Saints waited like a choir of chrome angels. Bear mounted his bike, raised his hand in signal, and 42 engines roared to life simultaneously. They rode out of the parking lot in formation, leaving behind nothing but tire tracks and snow and the memory of justice, served cold and loud and absolutely earned. Inside the mall, Preston Vane stood alone in the atrium, his reflection staring back at him from every polished surface, showing him exactly what he'd become. Outside, the news cameras captured everything. By morning, it would have 10 million views. But the Iron Saints weren't thinking about views or virality or revenge. They were thinking about a little girl in worn sneakers who'd believed in magic and been proven right. They were thinking about a mother who could finally stop crying. They were thinking about the drawing Bear had carefully folded and placed in his pocket, right next to the letter that started everything. They rode through the December night, their lights blazing against the darkness, their engines singing songs of victory and vindication. And as they disappeared into the falling snow, Heading back to the clubhouse where Beer and Brotherhood waited, they left behind a city that had witnessed something rare and precious. Proof that sometimes, when you ask for help, help actually arrives. Sometimes wearing leather. Sometimes riding motorcycles. Always keeping its promises. Christmas morning arrived quiet and white. Bear woke in his small apartment above the clubhouse, his body aching from the previous night's ride, his heart surprisingly light for the first time in years. His phone showed 247 text messages, 89 missed calls, and news notifications that suggested Operation North Pole had exceeded every expectation. The video of the Pine Grove visit had 12 million views. The confrontation at the mall had 8 million more. Hashtag Iron Saint Santa was trending nationally. 3 news networks wanted interviews. Bear ignored all of it. He made coffee, ate breakfast alone, and tried to remember the last time Christmas had felt like something other than survival. It had been before Sarah died. Before cancer had taken his wife and left him with nothing but memories and a motorcycle and the brotherhood that had kept him breathing when breathing felt impossible. But now, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Mr. Sullivan, this is Maria Chun. Lily wanted me to send you this. Merry Christmas. The attached video showed Lily in pajamas, sitting beside a small Christmas tree that definitely hadn't been there yesterday. Tommy Nguyen's work, no doubt. She was holding the drawing she'd made for Bear, adding more details to it with new crayons. But it was what she said that hit Bear directly in the chest. Hi, Mr. Bear. Mama says I can't call you Santa's security because that's pretend. But I think pretend and real are the same thing if enough people believe. So I'm gonna keep believing. Merry Christmas. You're the best security team ever. The video ended. Bear watched it 3 more times. Then he put on his coat and walked downstairs to the clubhouse, where the smell of bacon and coffee indicated that Maddie had arrived early to cook Christmas breakfast for anyone who didn't have family to spend it with. The main room was filling up. 20-some members, all of them tired, all of them smiling, swapping stories about the previous night's adventure. Bear, Tiny called out. You see the news? We're famous. They're calling us the Steel Santas. I saw. Preston Vane's trending too. Someone dug up his old college photos. He used to be in a fraternity that got shut down for hazing. Internet detectives are having a field day. Bear poured himself coffee, black and strong. Good for them. He earned it. What's next, Prez? Axel asked. We doing this again next year? Make it an annual thing. Bear considered. The clubhouse had never felt more like home than it did right now. Full of men who'd chosen brotherhood over blood, who'd spent Christmas Eve delivering miracles instead of drinking themselves numb. Yeah, he said finally. Yeah, we do this every year. Make it tradition. The Iron Saints Christmas run. Any kid who needs help gets it. Any Preston Vane who needs humbling gets that too. We keep our promises. Cheers went up. To keeping promises, someone shouted. To Steel Santas, another voice added. To Bear, for remembering what Christmas is actually about. They drank. They ate. They laughed with the ease of men who'd done something good and knew it. Later, as the morning stretched into afternoon and members began departing to spend the day with their own families, Bear found himself alone in the chapel, Lily's drawing spread on the oak table. He traced the careful lines she'd drawn. The motorcycle with wings. The smaller bike surrounding it. The words Santa's security team in crooked letters that spoke of hope and belief, and the kind of innocence the world worked so hard to crush. Bear pulled out his phone and texted Maria. Tell Lily that pretend and real are absolutely the same thing when enough people believe. And tell her the security team is always watching. Always keeping promises. Merry Christmas. The response came quickly. She says she knows. And she says thank you for making Mama stop crying. We have enough for rent now and a new job, and she says this is the best Christmas ever. Bear smiled. Alone in the chapel, surrounded by the ghosts of brotherhood past and present, he smiled like a man who'd found something he thought he'd lost forever. Purpose. Not the kind that came from revenge or anger or proving points to people like Preston Vane. The kind that came from a 6-year-old girl believing in magic and being proven right. The kind that came from keeping promises. Outside, snow continued to fall on a city that had witnessed a miracle and wouldn't soon forget it. News crews were still talking about the biker gang that had saved Christmas. Social media was still dissecting every angle of the story. Preston Vane was probably sitting in his expensive apartment, contemplating his ruined career and wondering how everything had gone so wrong so fast. But none of that mattered to Bear. What mattered was Lily's drawing, carefully folded, and placed in his wallet where it would stay. What mattered was the promise he'd made and kept. What mattered was the knowledge that sometimes, just sometimes, the good guys actually won. Bear stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the clubhouse parking lot, where Bertha sat covered in fresh snow, her Christmas lights finally dark. "Merry Christmas, Sarah," he said quietly to the wife who'd been gone 5 years, but never forgotten. "I think I finally figured out how to do this day again. Took a 6-year-old and a fired cleaning lady and a bunch of bikers and Christmas lights, but I got there." The snow kept falling. The world kept turning. And in a small apartment on 4th Street, a little girl named Lily Chun was telling her mother, for the 100th time, about the day she met Santa's security team and learned that miracles were real if you believed hard enough and got lucky enough to ask the right biker the right question. Bear's phone buzzed one more time. A group text to all Iron Saints members. "Next club meeting, we're planning Iron Saints Christmas 2026. Bigger, better, more lights. Tiny's in charge of decorations. Axel's on logistics. Everyone else, start thinking about which kids need help. We got 12 months to prepare. Let's make next year even better." Responses flooded in. "Hell yes. I'm buying stock in tinsel companies. Can we get an actual sleigh? Reaper, you are not welding a sleigh to your bike. Watch me." Bear laughed, actually laughed, and realized it had been years since Christmas had sounded like joy instead of obligation. He texted back, "Meeting's January 5th. Be there or be square. And someone bring Lily's drawing. We're framing it, hanging it in the chapel. Reminder of why we do this." The final text came from Maddie. "Arthur Sullivan, you old softy. I always knew there was a decent human under all that leather and bad attitude. Proud of you." Sarah would be proud too. Bear didn't respond to that one. Couldn't. The words got stuck somewhere between his heart and his throat. Instead, he walked back to the main room, poured himself another coffee, and sat with his brothers as Christmas afternoon faded into evening. They talked about bikes and routes and next year's plans. They talked about Preston Vane's spectacular fall and Maria Chen's new beginning. They talked about Lily and her letter and the way belief could change the world if you had the courage to act on it. But mostly, they sat together in the warmth of the clubhouse, a family of choice rather than blood, and understood that they'd stumbled onto something important. Not just Christmas charity. Not just viral videos and public humiliation of deserving targets. Something bigger. The knowledge that power didn't have to mean cruelty. That strength could be gentle. That the scariest looking people could be the kindest. That miracles were just promises kept by people who refused to break them. Outside, in the gathering darkness, Bertha sat covered in snow, her Christmas lights finally dark, her engine cool, waiting for the next ride, the next mission, the next promise to keep. And in his wallet, pressed between old receipts and a faded photo of Sarah, Bear carried a drawing of a motorcycle with wings and the crooked handwriting of a 6-year-old who'd asked a simple question and changed everything. "Are you Santa?" The answer, Bear had discovered, wasn't yes or no. The answer was, "Close enough. And I keep my promises. Always. Forever." Until the last engine went cold and the final promise was kept. That was the Iron Saints way. That was Christmas. That was enough. In the years that followed, the Iron Saints Christmas run became legendary. Annual tradition. Hundreds of bikes. Thousands of presents. Countless families helped. And at the head of every ride, Bear carried Lily's drawing in his wallet and remembered the day a little girl taught him that miracles were real and promises mattered, and sometimes the scariest looking people had the biggest hearts. Preston Vane never worked in retail management again. He did, eventually, find employment at a discount store in another state, making $15 an hour. He never forgot the night the bikers came. Neither did the internet. Maria Chun became supervisor of housekeeping at Tommy Nguyen's flagship hotel. She put herself through community college. Lily grew up believing in magic because she'd seen it firsthand. She became a social worker, helping families like hers had been. And every Christmas Eve, without fail, a motorcycle could be heard outside her window. Sometimes it was Bear. Sometimes it was another Iron Saint. But always, they kept their promise. Because that's what security teams do. They protect. They serve. They keep their promises. Even when, especially when, the promise is to a 6-year-old who still believes the world can be good.